As someone who's spent decades exploring creativity, business, and growth, I've learned one thing for sure. Reinvention isn't just inevitable, it's essential. Brand evolution isn't a sign of failure or confusion. It's a natural part of expanding into who we're truly meant to become, especially if you're a multi-passionate or a creative entrepreneur. Growth and reinvention are often messy, usually exciting, and deeply necessary. If I've learned nothing else in my 30 years in the online world, it's that. And I have learned a lot more than that. If you've been feeling restless or stuck, like your business feels like some metaphorical itchy pants and aren't quite sure why, well, this episode is your mirror, a chance to reflect on what's shifting beneath the surface, what it means when your brand starts to feel tight or out of sync, and what you can do about it. Cue that fancy intro music.
It's time to unleash your star power and own your dreams without selling your soul. It's time for some creative freedom. I'm Lisa Robbin Young, and I'm a creative entrepreneur just like you. I'm also a business coach, helping people across the creative spectrum make great money doing what they love. If you're done with being the world's best kept secret and ready to shine like the star you are, creative freedom is for you. Let's get started.
First, you can download our handy dandy one sheet that lists all these signs in the Rising Tide Learning Library. It's free. Just point your browser to creativefreedomshow.com, click the Rising Tide link, hop into Creative Freedom Season 8, Episode 10, and the PDF is right there waiting for you. Now, you may notice that our set has looked a bit different in the last couple of episodes. That's because I'm recording this in Portland, Oregon. After almost 3 years in Indiana, we sold off nearly everything that we own and we packed what was left in a storage box. Now we're still in temporary housing as I'm recording this, but we got the keys and our stuff's still in Indiana, so it's coming soon. But despite this uncertainty and this instability right now, it's really a fresh start in what feels like the perfect place to lean into the next phase of my creative and business journey. Now, this evolution didn't happen by accident, nor did it happen overnight. I mean, in some respects, this was a quick change. We had the idea to move in February, and by March, Jim was here, and I was out here in April. But on the whole, this evolution has been years in the making. Tiny signs all around me started popping up to point the way. So today I'm sharing with you 9 signs that are a clear indication that you are ripe for your next evolution. Sign number 1, you're exhausted by trying to fit into a box that wasn't made for you. Years ago, a client shared something that really stuck with me. She described feeling like her favorite pair of pants had become itchy. That's how she felt about her day job, and part of why she came to me in the first place. What once felt natural and energizing became constraining and very uncomfortable. She didn't want to throw the pants away just yet, but every time she put them on, the itch reminded her that something wasn't right. You know that feeling. When something that once fit so perfectly, so comfortably, just starts to irritate you. At first, it's like subtle, just a little bit of discomfort, but then over time, it grows, and no matter how much you try to ignore it or adjust your posture, the itchiness just becomes impossible to ignore. Ugh. I was really lucky early in my online career. It was still kind of the Wild West, so I didn't have a lot of people to look to see how things were done. The few women that were in the online space were way different than I was, so I didn't really pay attention to them. I showed up on my terms, for better or for worse. But that freedom was energizing. I was learning, experimenting, connecting deeply with people who really resonated with my realness. But as my audience grew, and my reputation began to solidify, I started to feel this itch. I noticed this subtle but persistent voice in my head that was whispering that I had to look or present a certain way, or at least a better way than what I had been doing, polishing every piece of content to perfection before letting it see the light of day, which is a classic problem for fusions and chaotic creatives. I just want you to know that. It's very much part of who we are. That easy flow that I once enjoyed became stifled by overthinking and self-imposed pressure to perform flawlessly, as if that's even a thing. The paradox was that my brand, the one that I had worked so hard to build, was becoming like those itchy pants. It looked good on the outside, but it felt unbearably uncomfortable on the inside. And when we moved to Indiana, I began to realize that I was showing up less as myself and more as a version of myself that felt expected, like this is who I have to be. And you've heard me say before that you train people how to treat you based on what you've come to accept from them and what they've come to expect from you. There were days I'd spend hours adjusting lighting and agonizing over my scripts, trying to make sure I had the right angles for everything and everything was going to be just perfect. There were entire interviews that I shelved because of tech issues that I thought would diminish the quality of the show. The joy of sharing ideas was quickly being replaced by a sense of dread and fatigue. It was trickling over into my client work, and it was impacting my mental health. Now, I was still committed to my work and my audience, but the energy was different. It was draining instead of invigorating. Now, that itch was a signal, not a setback. It was a call to reconsider the fit of my brand. Just like my client and her itchy pants day job, I had to decide whether I wanted to endure that discomfort or make a change. And that meant rethinking how I showed up, how much polish was really necessary, and what parts needed to shine through without all the filters. So if you're feeling that itch too, that exhaustion of trying to squeeze into a brand that no longer fits, take it as a sign. Your business, your visibility, your presence should be a garment that fits your true self, comfortable enough to move freely like a well-tailored piece of clothing, confident enough to show your edges, and flexible enough to grow with you. And here's the pivot. Recognizing this discomfort is the first step toward transformation, but the journey doesn't stop there. Because sometimes that itch is more than just a poor fit. It's a signal that you've outgrown your old story and you're ready to step into the new chapter. And that's where the next sign comes in. Sign number 2. Your inner critic gets louder every time you post or show up. In June, I hopped on a plane to New York City to attend Mike Ganino's Mic Drop Era retreat, one of those big leap moves that felt like an energetic yes, even though my brain was busy raising all the practical objections of moving and timing and rah. Well, at one point while we were sharing our ahas from the day, somebody said something so simple and so clear that the entire room let out a collective, You know that sound. When something just lands in the body as truth. Well, in that moment, I had this lightning bolt realization that the right message will never land if you're in the wrong room. It hit me hard because I realized how much of this current season of creative freedom has felt like dragging heels and pulling teeth. We've been working on this season for 2 years. More than 2 years. More than 2 years. And yes, there were real, valid reasons. Life happened. But underneath the logistics, there were deeper things going on. Among them, the friction of showing up in a brand that didn't fit like it used to. And it started small, this nagging feeling that the visuals didn't reflect the evolution that was happening inside me. So I booked a new photo shoot. And I told myself, once this season wraps, I'll unveil the new branding and I'll start fresh. Well, fast forward to now, 2 years later, more than 2 years later, you're still seeing the old branding and all the episode marketing while I look completely different on the inside of the episode. And despite all my planning, the photo shoot, the vision, the ideas, I kept putting off this shift. Then at that same retreat, during an offline conversation, a colleague asked me a deceptively simple question that kind of made me go, as the gears shifted in my brain. She said, "Is that actually true?" Meaning, did I have to finish this season before I could roll out the new direction? Well, enter my old pal, the inner critic. Lisa, you are so far behind, you will never catch up. Everyone's forgotten about you anyway. Why bother? That voice has been with me this whole time, whispering, nudging, yelling, and instead of pausing to truly listen, to understand what it was pointing me toward, I just kept trying to push through, to get it done, to tick boxes and stay consistent, whatever that means, even when my energy and my enthusiasm were anything but consistent. Your inner critic isn't always trying to sabotage you. Sometimes it's waving a giant red flag that something is misaligned. And that voice gets louder when your truth gets quieter. When your brand no longer reflects who you're becoming, every piece of content starts to feel performative. Like you're playing a role that you're secretly trying to retire from. Look, I had big ideas for season 8, and I still love many of them. But the truth is, I wanted to be done with this season almost before it began. And part of the reason it's dragged on for so long is because I felt shame to admit that. Season 7 worked because I had help. I had a brilliant copywriter, a rock-solid marketing assistant, and I got to stay in my zone of genius. I didn't have to do that stuff. But season 8, help was harder to come by. which meant a lot of it was back on my plate again. I was in my head a lot, hearing the critic, doubting my voice, questioning the direction of my business, questioning me. If you're finding yourself creating content but dreading the moment that you hit publish, if you're hearing your inner critic every time you show up on camera, on the mic, or in your marketing, or if posting feels more like pressure than purpose, it might not be about your content at all. It might be your brand trying to tell you, this version of me has done its job, it is time to evolve. What is your inner critic really trying to protect you from? And what might it be trying to show you? When your brand is too tight, it doesn't just silence your confidence, it suffocates your creativity. And that's sign number 3. You're inspired by ideas you haven't given yourself permission to pursue yet. And you know the ones I'm talking about. The ideas that light you up when you're out for a walk or in the shower or driving or, like I do, singing at the top of your lungs in the kitchen. They show up unannounced. They are clear and exciting and so you. But instead of running with them, you file them away and you tell yourself, oh, maybe someday. Right now, I can't. I got all it. That's going to have to wait. But what if someday is a sign? When you're inspired by something that feels fresh and bold and maybe even a little bit scary, and you don't give yourself permission to explore it, that tension starts to build and it sits in your system, and eventually it starts to weigh you down. That's exactly what happened to me with this reality show. Yes, I said reality show. The idea came to me during a time when I was spinning my wheels, trying to figure out how to teach my Star Power framework in a way that felt alive, in a way that felt real, that let people see it in action instead of just hearing me talk about it in theory. Now, my first instinct was to dismiss it. I'm like, that's too much work. How am I going to fund that? What if it's boring and nobody cares? But I really wasn't afraid of the work. I know how to do hard work. I wasn't scared about funding it. All right, maybe a little bit. But I was okay with that. And I'm a lot of things, but boring isn't one of them. The thing that terrifies me, even though I know that it's what I'm built for, is what it would mean to give myself that level of permission, to take center stage, to be the subject, not just the strategist, to build a visibility vehicle for myself that was designed around my energetic rhythm instead of trying to reverse engineer somebody else's formula or to do it for somebody else. You know, that thing that I teach all my clients. That level of expansion didn't fit inside the box that I'd been building with creative freedom in that brand. I mean, yes, I am the face of this brand. What a lovely face it is. But the star is really the strategies and the insights and the results that you can get from using them. I've invested a lot of my career in helping other people and saying, it's not about me. This isn't the Lisa show. I'm the guinea pig so that you can learn from my mistakes and not have to do things the hard way. I can't tell you how many times I've said that over the years. And I'm still doing that to some degree. But now I see it for what it is. It's a way to make myself and my vision for my work smaller, safer, to tuck it into something familiar. A surprise, every time I do that, the energy leaks. The spark dims. Which is why it's taken 2 freaking years to complete this season of the show. Not because I was moving or working on other projects, which I was, but because I had itchy pants about the whole thing. Your most potent ideas don't come with guarantees. They don't arrive with step-by-step launch plans or conversion projections. They show up as invitations, nudges, possibilities. And when you ignore them long enough, that becomes part of your brand too. So if you're bursting with creative ideas that scare you or that thrill you, but you haven't let yourself touch them yet, ask yourself, is my current brand big enough to hold the person that I'm becoming? Because if it's not, you'll either shrink the idea or you'll shrink yourself to fit back inside that brand. And I don't want that for you. I don't want it for me, especially not when your raving fans are already waiting for you to show up and own that next level version of your work. Sign number 4. You're attracted to different types of clients and collaborations. Another telltale sign that you've outgrown your current brand is when you find yourself drawn to work, clients, or collaborations that don't quite fit the identity that you've already built. In the early days of my business, I was all in on helping early stage entrepreneurs, direct sellers, side hustlers, people who were still in that, can I even make this thing work phase? And honestly, I loved it because I was there. I got it. I could see the potential in people before they could even see it in themselves. And that work lit me up like a Christmas tree for years. But over time, without even consciously realizing it, I started feeling more excited by deeper, more strategic conversations. I wanted to talk about identity and sovereignty and sustainable visibility, not just sales funnels or social media posts. I wanted to support clients who had already built something and were now navigating the complexity of how to grow it, evolve it, or even reinvent it without having to sell their soul in the process. And yet my brand was still speaking to this old audience. I found myself on calls with prospects that didn't even excite me. I mean, they excited me, okay, because I love seeing the possibilities in people. But the role that they wanted me to play in their business didn't excite me. I was doing the very thing that I warned my clients about, saying yes to projects I'd outgrown, feeling drained by the work instead of feeling energized. And the more I tried to force it, the more out of alignment I felt. Your brand doesn't just attract clients. It attracts a caliber of conversation, collaboration, and opportunity. And if your messaging, your visuals, and your energy don't reflect who you've become, you'll keep calling in work that no longer matches your current zone of genius. And that June retreat was a great example of that as well. The people in the room were at a different place in their businesses than the clients I'd worked with in my early career. These were not startup side hustlers. They were established entrepreneurs, some with decades of experience in their arenas. Remember, the right message will never land in the wrong room. When you're in the wrong rooms, it feels like screaming into the void. So much noise that you can't cut through. It's frustrating, it's demoralizing, and it is oh so painful. But in the right rooms, things land. People see you, not only see you, they seek you out, maybe even celebrate you. And that's what I want more of for myself and for you. If the work that once lit you up now leaves you cold, it doesn't mean you failed. It means you've grown. Yay, hooray for growth. And your brain needs to grow with you. Yeah, I know. That can feel scary. But it doesn't have to be that way. I had a client who kept getting asked to speak about topics that she didn't care about anymore because that's what people knew her for. But behind the scenes, her passions had shifted and she had shifted. She wanted to talk about new things that her old brand didn't reflect. And as a result, she felt boxed in, she felt restless, she felt resentful, she really didn't know what to do to change this. We had to work on repositioning her in the market so that people would start coming to her for the things that she wanted to be talking about now and not the things that she had been talking about years and years ago. And that's not something you can do in a single email or a social media post or a single YouTube video. Like, it cannot be done that way. It's like a relaunch. Even if it's a soft relaunch, it's a relaunch all the same. And you need to treat your reinvention and your repositioning with that much care and that much consideration. Think about it this way. Your highest and best clients, the ones who inspire you, who challenge you and help you rise, can't find you if you're still marketing to an earlier version of yourself. And the same is true for collaborations, podcast guest spots, speaking gigs, like all of it. If you want to work in new rooms, you have to let the world know you belong in those rooms. How? By showing up in those rooms in some small way. Even if you don't feel like you belong. Because everyone else in the room assumes you belong there because you're there. They're not questioning whether or not you should be in the room. Just you. You're the one doing that. And you'll never feel like you belong if you don't start showing up. Now, that does not mean you have to plunk down thousands of dollars to hop on a plane and fly somewhere. You can just start by being part of the conversation that's happening online. Who are the players in that market that you want recognition in? Start engaging with them. Is there an event you'd love to speak at or attend someday? Watch the event chat or the after-event reviews. Engage in those comments. Talk to those people. Learn who the players are. And then take an interest. The sooner you get yourself into the room, virtual or otherwise, the sooner people will take a greater interest in who you are and what you offer because you're in that room. What kinds of clients, collaborations, or creative opportunities are you secretly craving? And what would you need to shift in your brand for those to feel possible? Because sometimes the business that you've built, the one you've poured years of your life into, simply can't carry you where you're meant to go next. Well, that doesn't mean you failed. Doesn't mean your business is broken. It just means you've outgrown the original container, like a flower outgrows its flower pot. In a recent interview, author and business strategist Tim Grahl shared that he and his business partner Sean Coyne the story grid folks, realized that they had created a business model that couldn't get them to the next level of growth, reach, or the lifestyle that they had both envisioned. Now, they were successful. They were hovering in that mid six-figure range, but they were stuck. And no matter how hard they worked inside that model, it wasn't going to take them where they wanted to grow beyond 7 figures. So instead of doubling down on what wasn't working, Tim spent the next 18 months asking questions. Lots of questions. He talked to about 600 people, clients and subscribers and potential clients. He gathered insights, he looked for patterns, and he started to reimagine the business from the ground up. Now, that deliberate exploration led to a business model shift that not only broke through their plateau, but now is on track to quadruple their revenue with a model that can grow with them over time instead of holding them back. I share that because I've lived it too. For most of the last 30 years, I've helped early growth stage entrepreneurs, people starting out, building their first offers, finding their footing. And I loved that work. But over time, I started to feel a pull I couldn't ignore. There was this voice inside whispering, this isn't it. There's something bigger calling you. And it wasn't just me. Clients began showing up in my world, saying the exact same thing. Like, I can't explain it, but I've known since I was a kid or for a long time that I'm meant for something bigger. I'm supposed to be on a national platform or an international stage or an audience of thousands. You can search your big goal here, right? But I can't figure out how. Those questions set me on the path of researching what eventually became the Star Power Method, this very framework that I am living and writing about now. If the life that you want doesn't fit inside the business that you've built, that's not a problem. It's an invitation to zoom out, to ask new questions, to let yourself want what you want the way that you want it without guilt or apology for it. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to get it, but if you don't want it, how is it ever going to come to fruition? That's where reinvention begins. Not with burnout or collapse, but with the simple awareness that you're ready for more. So where have you been listening to that voice telling you to just be grateful for what you've built, even though your heart knows you're meant for something bigger? What might be possible if you gave yourself permission to outgrow your current model and step into something else? And I get that it might be hard to trust that prompting or to see yourself through it, especially if you've got old programming telling you that it's just easier or safer to stay small. I was married to a guy that tried to drill that into my head and heart for years, and it has taken a lot of work to stop hearing that voice in my head and recalibrate, realign myself to what's most true for me. That I was meant for more than he could ever handle. Maybe that's true for you too? One thing I can say from experience is that if you ignore that call for too long, you will start to feel it in your body, in your energy, your spirit. One of the clearest signs that you've outgrown your brand or your entire business is that the work that you used to love starts to feel like a grind. And I'm not talking about itchy pants or even a bad day or a tough week. I am talking about a bone deep weariness. The kind of fatigue that doesn't come from doing too much, but from doing too much of the wrong things. I felt it coming on for a while, but I just kind of shrugged it off and plowed through because I had clients and revenue. And I should be grateful for what I've got, especially during a pandemic when a lot of businesses were failing. And now as the world is burning down around us in late post-stage capitalism, blah, sound familiar? Yeah. Well, last year it hit me really hard and I couldn't shake it off anymore. I've been running the Creative Freedom Incubator and hosting my annual client retreat for about 8 years, supporting some really incredible entrepreneurs through that messy middle of building businesses that felt true to who they are. And it was deeply fulfilling work. I love those people. I loved that transformation, but somewhere along the way, I stopped loving my role in it. It was never my intention for the incubator to become my primary revenue stream, but that's what happened. And as it grew, I found myself pouring in more time, energy, money, attention, all the things at the expense of what I wanted for my own life and business. I had invested thousands of hours inside these early stage businesses, helping people birth their dreams. And as much as I love these people and the missions that they stood for, I wasn't loving the work that I was doing anymore. And as B.B. King said, the thrill is gone, the thrill is gone away. It was gone. And I started feeling that way too with the Creative Freedom Show. I mapped out season 8 more than 2 years ago. It holds up. I mean, the topics are timeless. The content is valuable. But inside me, I feel so old. I feel so Like I'm dragging myself through the motions of a life that no longer fits. And I kind of blame my neurodivergent brain on this because it wants to close the open loops before I move on to something new. But I also recognize how my upbringing plays into this programming. Finish what you start, keep your commitments, don't leave anybody hanging. Well, funnily enough, I tell my own clients, you just close the book and say I'm done. I'm complete. It's finished. But I couldn't get my own brain to see it that way. Actually, more accurately, I couldn't believe for myself that it was safe for me to close the book and walk away. Every time another stumbling block popped up, health challenges, family stuff, the move, I kept telling myself I just had to push through and get this part done, and then. Once this happens, then we can. But all that pushing left me resentful, frustrated, and honestly more than ready to walk away. And here's where it gets funny, or maybe sad. I took a full-time job at a radio station, not because I needed the money, but because I just wanted something fun and different, something light, something that made me feel alive again. Can you imagine taking a full-time job while you're running a business because you wanted something fun to do? That should have been the biggest red flag of all, especially since it really wasn't all that much fun. It was a lot of work. I learned a lot. It was a great experience in that respect, but it was not the fun that I was hoping it would be. When you've outgrown your work, it's going to drain you no matter how much you try to love it. No amount of strategy, rebranding, or willpower will bring back that spark. The only way forward is to stop and to listen, to speed up by slowing down. Infusion Creatives, this one's for you. I know how hard this is, trust me, but you need to do it. To honor that exhaustion for the message that it's carrying. To recognize that your evolution requires more than just a new offer. It requires a new alignment. If you're constantly fantasizing about escape, whether that's taking a fun job, burning it all down, or disappearing into the woods, or running off to join the circus, it's not a personal failure, it is feedback. Your work is ready to grow, and so are you. So let it happen. And sometimes when you're stuck between who you were and who you're becoming, the first thing that starts to shrink is your voice. When you've outgrown your brand, but you haven't yet stepped fully into what's next, it can feel like your voice disappears. You second guess what to say. You question how to say it. Sometimes you don't say anything at all. And I know this place intimately. The past couple of years have really felt like a foggy mess. Posting to social media here and there, but not really marketing, not really showing up with the energy or the clarity or the conviction that I once had. I told myself it was because life was happening, and to be fair, it was happening. Moving across the country, health challenges, a mountain of other demands pulling in my attention. But that's only part of the story, because that move only happened recently. When you're in a liminal space, when the old way doesn't fit, but the new way isn't fully formed yet, it's very disorienting, and it's really hard to know what to say or how to say it or who you're even saying it to. And the last thing that you want to do, especially when you're already drained, is attract more of the work that's not aligned just to pay the bills. So you shrink, you dim, you stay visible enough to not disappear entirely, but your heart's not really in it. You're kind of mailing it in, but kind of trying to not, and it's really complicated. And for my clients who are often already stuck in hiding, afraid of being harmed or causing harm, this shrinking is even more dangerous because they're not just dimming their light, they're staying invisible, and that invisibility keeps them from the great work that they're here to do. So you're not just dimming your light, you're staying invisible, and that invisibility keeps you from the great work that you are here to do. I've lived this cycle more than once. When I wrote Creative Freedom, the key story, the one about sorting my clients into piles of sticky notes that eventually became the Creative Entrepreneur Spectrum, that came out of a time when my business was falling apart. I didn't have a polished message. I didn't have a clean elevator pitch. What I had was a mess. But I kept telling the truth as I was living it, and people got curious. Hell, I was booking interviews before the book was even finished because people could feel the authenticity even in the mess, and they were curious and they wanted to know more. That's not what I've been doing the last couple of years. Somewhere along the way, I convinced myself I had nothing helpful to say, nothing new to add to the conversation. I mean, I have been online for 30 years. And I believed that I had to have it all together before I could say anything meaningful, or I might get canceled or cause harm, or that I needed a polished message before I could even open my mouth. And so I said less and less and less. And a colleague even called me out on it recently. Shout out to Rachel K. Albers. She's like, something's been missing lately, she said. Frankly, I stopped trying to answer that "so what do you do?" question, because I really didn't know anymore. I mean, I'm a creative entrepreneur, a musician, a multimedia producer, an author, a speaker, a former radio show host, a coach. Dear God, how many hyphenates can one woman have? It's no wonder I started censoring my messaging. I was lost in the butterfly goo, the messy middle of reinvention, just like so many of my clients. Your voice doesn't need to be finished and perfect to be valuable. The message doesn't have to be perfect to be true. When you dim yourself in your messaging, you don't just rob yourself, you rob the people who are waiting for the medicine that only you can give. And if you're finding yourself saying less, hiding behind perfectionism, or quietly ghosting your audience because you're afraid of getting it wrong, you're not broken. You're just in transition. Welcome to the club. And the first step forward is to start telling the truth again, even if it's messy, even if you're still becoming. In the early days of my business, I wasn't paying much attention to what anybody else was doing. I was just doing my own thing. I'd have an idea and I'd follow it. I wasn't worried about whether my lighting was perfect or my email copy matched the latest trends or whether my branding looked a certain way. I was scrappy. I was playful. I was, frankly, too busy having fun to get caught up in comparison because I was kind of living a siloed life. And then I started to grow and clients found me and my audience started to expand. And I started to build a reputation. And with that growth came pressure to look a certain way, to have a certain kind of polish, to meet some invisible standard of what a real or professional business should be. I think it was Admiral Akbar who said, "It's a trap." I created the trap and I fell for it. I invested in better production, I hired help, I built systems, all of which are important at the right time. Hell, I even did a video about when you know it's time for an upgrade. I did all the right things, and for a while that served me. But slowly over time, what had once felt liberating started to feel heavy and restrictive, like I was performing somebody else's version of success instead of living my own. So I started withholding more and more of myself from my work. I heard a colleague say something recently that hit me right in the feels, and they were saying something like in the early days of this version of their business, they felt free to be raw and in the moment and less polished, but as their brand grew, it felt like they had to be on all the time and perfect and prepared and scripted. And oofda, that was exactly what was happening to me. That was exactly how I was feeling. Like these rules that had helped me in one season became the bars of my cage in the next. What used to feel like guidance became a trap. And here's the kicker. Okay, sometimes, a lot of the time, those rules aren't even real. They're just stories that we tell ourselves. Like, I have to post X number of times a week. My videos need to look professional. If I don't stay perfectly on brand, people will leave. If I pivot, I'll lose everything I build. And so we follow these stories, these made-up rules, long after they have stopped serving us. I'm not saying don't have these things. I'm not saying to not use them. They will serve a purpose. I'm saying don't stay chained to them once they don't work for you anymore. Because you will outgrow your old structures and you won't know what to replace them with. That's the uncomfortable, messy middle of reinvention. Welcome! It's also the moment where you realize that the best practices that you once swore by might not actually be best for who you're becoming. And the only way out is through. Look, you get to rewrite the rules. You get to burn the old playbook. You get to evolve. Because your best work, your most resonant message, won't come from stuffing yourself back into an outdated mold. It will come when you let go and trust that the real you is enough. And I hear the fear of alienating current clients and burning bridges and whatnot. Oh, Lisa, I can't afford to lose my current clients. What if they hate this new direction? What if they all leave? What if they talk shit about me behind my back? Look, this is not just about losing revenue. Although, let's be honest, that fear is real too. And you need to do what you need to do in order to take care of yourself. I'm not saying that. On a deeper level, though, this isn't about that. This is about losing your sense of belonging. Yeah, I said it. You already know you belong with these folks. They love and adore you. They can't get enough of you. It's comfortable. And dare I say safe here, although safety is an illusion. But out there, in that new arena, well, that's the great unknown right now. At least sort of. It's that terror of believing that you'll all of a sudden become unlovable or unworthy or irrelevant because you dared to grow. How dare you? The nerve. That it's not safe to be this new version of you. And yet the cost of staying small to keep everybody else comfortable, that's the costliest thing of all. Sometimes the scariest part of reinvention isn't the how, it's the when. Most of the time, though, you already know. You know it's time to let go. It's time to evolve, time to become the next version of yourself and your work. But you're scared. Not because you don't want it, but because you do want it. And the weight of that desire, the bigness of what's calling you forward, feels overwhelming. And I've been sitting in that space for the last couple of years. Even as I kept doing the work, showing up, serving clients, filming episodes, I could feel it. This low hum beneath the surface, this whisper that got louder every time I pushed it aside. It's time. It's time. It's time. Time to close the doors on the parts of my business that no longer fit. Time to stop teaching in the same way I always have. Time to stop hiding behind the roles that I've outgrown. But every time I heard that whisper, that fear would rise too. What if I mess this up? What if no one comes with me? What if I fail publicly, spectacularly? This is that threshold moment. And here's the thing about threshold. You can't cross them without leaving something behind. For me, that meant finally deciding to wrap this season of the Creative Freedom Show. It meant admitting that I was no longer lit up by the way I had been doing things, even if I'm lit up about the ideas. It meant creating space for something bigger, something that's been tugging at me for years. Telling my story in a bigger way. Taking center stage in my own life and my business. Owning the fact that I'm not the same person I was when I started this journey 30 years ago, and you're not the same person you were 5 days ago. That restless pull you've been feeling, that ache to do something different, to be seen differently, to express more of yourself, that's not something to silence. That's your future calling you forward. Fear doesn't mean you're not ready. Fear means you're right on time. And while you can't control how others will react to your evolution, you can choose to honor what is true for you. Because on the other side of fear, that's where your next chapter begins. This is the final episode of the Creative Freedom Show, at least for now. After 10 years and 8 seasons, it is time for a new chapter. Not because I stopped loving the work, not because I don't believe in creative freedom anymore, but because I'm being called into something bigger. I am scared AF about this, and it's time to answer that call. For the next year, I'm stepping fully into this experiment, this new reality show that I've quietly been filming since January. It's documenting everything as I write my next book, build the business behind it, create the program that ties it all together. You'll see the highs, the wins, the breakthroughs, the moments where everything clicks. And you'll see the lows, the struggles, the health scares, the fear, the doubt, the oh my God, what am I even doing moments. No stone unturned, no polish, just truth. Maybe a little bit of polish, just a little. Old habits die hard. I walked away from my full-time radio gig. We sold off nearly everything we owned. We moved across the country to Portland. My husband's been in and out of the hospital more times than I care to count. I am months into this project, and I still don't know how it's going to shake out. And that's exactly the point. This is a real-time reinvention. And you're invited to come along for the ride if you want to join me. You can watch the monthly episodes for free on my YouTube channel. And if you want more, if you want to go deeper with early access, behind the scenes moments, the full unfiltered journey, there's also an annual pass that you can get with exclusive content that you're not going to find anywhere else. And I'll share all the details in the show notes for that. But for now, I just want to leave you with this. If you're standing at your own threshold, if you're hearing that whisper of, it's time, let this be your permission slip. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't need a guaranteed outcome. You just need to take the next brave step. Because your future, the one that's calling you forward, it's already waiting for you. That's a wrap on Creative Freedom Season 8. Be sure that you are subscribed to our email list so that you will get notified when the new reality show drops. And until then, for more inspiration and education to help you unleash your star power and own your dreams without selling your soul, come see what's shaking over at creativefreedomshow.com. You know you want to.